The morning sun reflected off the massive hull of the U.S. Constellation, making the old aircraft carrier shine like a beacon in the new Seattle harbor. Thomas Reed stood at his usual spot on the deck, his weathered hands resting on the rails as he watched the first visitors of the day approach the gangway. At 78, he had spent more years as the ship's curator than he had spent alive during its active service. Another beautiful day at the office, he muttered to himself, smiling as he heard the excited chatter of schoolchildren floating up from below. These days, most kids came to see the newer exhibitions, the holographic space battles, and the virtual reality combat simulators. But Thomas knew the real treasure was the ship itself. The Constellation wasn't just any museum piece. Unlike other retired vessels that had been gutted and turned into hollow shells, this Nimitz-class carrier had been maintained in working order. It was part of the Heritage Preservation Act of 2389, which required at least one ship of each class to be kept in operational condition. Most people thought it was a waste of money, but Thomas knew better. He walked through his morning routine, checking each station and display. His footsteps echoed through the massive hangar deck where old F-35 fighters stood in perfect rows, their panels gleaming under the bright lights. Each plane was also maintained in working order, another requirement that many had questioned over the years. The first tour group of the day gathered around Mary, one of the younger guides. "And here we have the last operational Nimitz-class carrier," she explained to the visitors. "Though, of course, it hasn't moved from this spot in over 50 years. Thomas smiled to himself. That wasn't entirely true. Every month, when the museum was closed for maintenance, they ran all systems at low power. The massive engines still worked. The nuclear reactor, though running on minimal output, was still active. Even the aircraft elevators and catapults were tested regularly. It was his little secret, shared only with a handful of certified maintenance crews. The morning passed quietly until Thomas noticed something odd. The usual stream of messages on his neural implant had stopped. He walked to his office, a small room filled with both physical books and holographic displays. The main screen was flashing red. The emergency broadcast system had been activated. The message was brief but terrifying. ALERT. Unknown hostile forces detected in the Proxima Centauri colony. Fleet engagement in progress. Civilian casualties reported. This is not a drill. Thomas felt his heart race as he pulled up more information. The data streaming in painted a grim picture. Humanity's outer colonies were under attack by an alien force that had appeared without warning. The Earth Defense Fleet had already mobilized, but early reports weren't good. He looked out his window at the crowds of visitors still wandering the ship, blissfully unaware of what was happening light years away. Then his neural implant buzzed with a private message, one he had hoped never to receive. Protocol Whiskey Hotel is now active. Acknowledge. Thomas's hands shook as he sent his confirmation. Years ago, when he had taken this job, he had been briefed about this protocol. It seemed absurd then, the idea that a museum ship might ever be needed for actual combat. But the politicians and military planners had insisted on maintaining this backup plan, hidden in plain sight. He began sending coded messages to specific individuals around the city. Former naval officers, retired engineers, and military historians, all people who had been carefully chosen and briefed about this possibility. Then he started the subtle process of evacuating the museum. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice echoed through the ship's still-functioning announcement system. "Due to an unexpected maintenance issue, we will be closing early today. Please proceed to the exit in an orderly fashion. All ticket holders will receive a full refund and a free pass for their next visit." As the confused visitors made their way out, Thomas received the first responses to his messages. They were coming. The old crew, the ones who had trained in secret for years, were on their way. He made his way to the bridge, each step feeling heavier than the last. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the deck. In the distance, he could see the sleek shapes of modern warships moving out to sea, the active duty fleet mobilizing for war. Thomas touched the old captain's chair, his mind racing through everything that needed to be done. The weapons systems would need to be brought online. The aircraft would need to be checked and armed. The reactor would need to be brought up to full power for the first time in decades. His neural implant buzzed again with another emergency alert. The news was worse than he had feared. The alien force had broken through the outer defenses. The Earth Defense Fleet was taking heavy losses. Their energy weapons and advanced shields were failing against whatever technology the aliens were using. A soft chime announced the arrival of the first response team. Through the bridge windows, Thomas could see people arriving in ones and twos, trying not to draw attention. Many were older, like him, but they moved with purpose. They knew what needed to be done. "Welcome aboard," he said to the first group as they reached the bridge. "I wish it were under better circumstances." Among them was Robert Miller, a former naval captain who now taught history at the local university. "Never thought we'd actually have to do this," Miller said, looking around the bridge with professional interest. "How long until we're ready?" Thomas pulled up the status displays, their ancient screens coming to life. "The reactor can be at full power in 6 hours. Weapons systems will take longer. We'll need to break out the ammunition from the sealed storage. The real challenge will be the aircraft. We have 12 F-35s in operational condition, but they'll need to be armed and checked thoroughly." The others were already moving to their stations, muscle memory taking over despite the years away. They had trained for this, even if they had never truly believed it would happen. "What about crews?" Miller asked. "We're going to need more people." Thomas nodded toward the windows, where more people were arriving. "I've activated the full reserve list. But you're right, we'll need to train new people quickly, especially pilots." A loud alarm cut through the air, making everyone freeze. Thomas pulled up the alert on the main screen. The news struck him like a physical blow. The Earth Defense Fleet had suffered a major defeat. Most of their ships were destroyed or disabled. The alien force would reach Earth within days. "Well," Thomas said, looking at the determined faces around him, "I guess we'd better get to work. Captain Miller, I believe you're the ranking officer present. The ship is yours." Miller straightened, years dropping away as he assumed command. "Right, let's show these aliens what an old Earth warship can do. Begin power-up procedures. And someone find us some pilots, preferably ones who still remember how to fly without computer assistance." As the bridge came alive with activity, Thomas took one last look at the peaceful harbor. Soon, the holographic camouflage would be deactivated, revealing the fully armed and operational carrier beneath. Soon, the aliens would learn that humanity had more than one way to fight. The old curator smiled. Maybe those yearly maintenance budgets hadn't been such a waste after all. Captain Robert Miller stood in the carrier's bustling hangar deck, watching his crews work through the night to prepare the F-35s for combat. The sound of tools hitting metal echoed off the walls, mixing with urgent voices and the hum of power systems coming online. Just 24 hours ago, he had been preparing lecture notes about the Third World War. Now he was preparing for humanity's next great battle. "Sir, we found more pilots," called out James Wilson, a former flight instructor who had arrived an hour ago. He led a group of 5 people toward Miller. "They all have experience with older aircraft. 2 of them even flew these models in simulators." Miller nodded, studying the group. They weren't what he would have chosen in better times. 2 cargo pilots, a civilian flight instructor, and 2 air show performers. But they understood the basics of flight without relying on AI assistance, and that's what mattered now. "Welcome aboard," Miller said. "I know this isn't what any of you expected to be doing today, but we're short on options. The aliens have knocked out most of our modern defenses. Their shields seem to stop energy weapons, but we're betting they've never faced good old-fashioned bullets and missiles." The pilots exchanged glances, but none of them backed away. One of them, an older woman with gray hair tied back in a tight bun, stepped forward. "Name's Lisa Thompson. Been flying restored warbirds for 15 years. These jets might be newer than what I'm used to, but the principles are the same. Point me at the enemy, and I'll give them hell. Above them, the massive hangar doors began to open, revealing the night sky. The holographic camouflage that usually hid the ship's military features had been deactivated, showing the carrier's true nature. Emergency lights cast everything in a red glow, making the scene feel even more surreal. Thomas Reed appeared from behind a fighter, his face tired but determined. "Captain, we've got the ammunition stores opened. Crews are loading the planes now. Basic missiles and rounds. Nothing fancy, but they'll do the job." Miller was about to respond when every neural implant in the hangar buzzed simultaneously. The news made his blood run cold. The alien fleet had broken through the last line of defense at Mars. They would reach Earth within 12 hours. "Time to speed things up," Miller announced. "Thompson, get your people to the simulators. You've got 6 hours to learn these birds. The rest of you, keep working. I want every plane ready for launch when the time comes." He turned to Thomas. "What about the ship's defenses?" "Coming online now," Thomas replied. "The CIWS still works perfectly. Tested it last month. Missile systems are good too. We've even got some old electronic warfare gear that might come in handy. The aliens won't expect signals from this era." Miller's neural implant buzzed again. This time, it was a message from the emergency command center that had been set up inland. Other museum ships worldwide were being activated. The U.S. Missouri in Pearl Harbor, the Charles de Gaulle in Marseille, even old submarines were being brought back to life. "Sir," a voice called from across the hangar, "you need to see this." Miller and Thomas hurried over to where a group had gathered around a video feed. It showed the space battle above Mars. The alien ships were sleek and powerful, their energy weapons cutting through space. But something caught Miller's eye. "Play that back," he ordered. "Slow it down." The footage replayed, showing an alien ship destroying an Earth vessel. But just before the Earth ship exploded, a conventional missile had slipped through. The alien shields had flickered oddly around the projectile. "They're shields," Miller said slowly. "They're tuned for energy weapons. They might not stop physical projectiles as effectively." He turned to Thomas. "Did you see that?" The old curator was already nodding. "That's why they kept us operational. The military planners suspected we might face enemies with defenses like these. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The pilots ran simulation after simulation, learning to handle the jets without modern AI assistance. Maintenance crews worked frantically to prepare every weapon system. More volunteers arrived. Former military, museum staff, even civilians with useful skills. Miller walked the ship with Thomas, checking each station. The massive carrier was coming alive around them. The nuclear reactor was now at full power, steam building in the catapults. Radar systems from 3 different eras were online, giving them a mix of capabilities that might confuse alien sensors. "Look at this," Thomas said, leading Miller to a storage room. Inside were crates of old radio equipment. No quantum communication, no FTL signals, just basic radio waves. "Bet the aliens won't be monitoring these frequencies." Miller smiled for the first time in hours. "Bring it all online. We'll coordinate with the other museum ships. They won't expect a bunch of antiques to have any fight left in them." They reached the bridge just as dawn was breaking. The view outside was terrifying. Bright flashes lit up the sky as the alien fleet engaged Earth's remaining defenses. Modern warships were falling quickly, their advanced weapons useless against the enemy's shields. "Captain," called out the radar operator, "multiple bogies entering atmosphere. They're heading for major cities." Miller took a deep breath and sat in the captain's chair. "Start launch preparations. Get those fighters ready. And someone wake up the gun crews. Let's see if these aliens can handle a taste of 20th century firepower." Thomas watched as the bridge crew worked with growing confidence. The old ship's systems might have been outdated, but they were robust and reliable. No complex AI to hack, no quantum fields to disrupt, just solid engineering and human skill. "Sir," called out the communication officer, "we're picking up signals from other museum ships. They're all reporting ready. The Missouri is already engaging alien craft in Hawaii." "Good," Miller said. "Tell all hands to prepare for combat. We're about to remind everyone why they kept these old ships around." He looked at Thomas. "Thank you for keeping her ready all these years." Thomas nodded, his eyes bright. "Just doing my job, Captain. Though I never thought we'd actually need her like this." The first alien ship appeared on their radar, heading straight for New Seattle. It was time. Miller pressed the ship-wide communication button, his voice echoing through every compartment of the massive carrier. "All hands, this is the captain speaking. In a few minutes, we're going to show these aliens something they've never seen before. How Earth fought wars before we had fancy energy weapons and quantum shields. Every system on this ship was built to be tough, reliable, and deadly. The aliens think they've won because they beat our modern fleet. They don't know about us yet. Let's introduce ourselves." He nodded to the flight control officer. "Launch the first wave. Let's make history proud." The deck of the U.S. Constellation shook as the first F-35 thundered down the catapult. Lisa Thompson's fighter shot forward, climbing rapidly into the dawn sky. 3 more jets followed quickly behind her, their engines roaring in a way that hadn't been heard over New Seattle for decades. Thomas Reed watched from the bridge, his heart pounding as the old carrier launched its first combat mission in over 50 years. Behind him, Captain Miller was coordinating with the other museum ships through the ancient radio systems. "Missouri reports success in Hawaii," the radio operator called out. "Their old shells went right through the alien shields. They've already taken down 2 enemy ships." Miller nodded, but his attention was on the radar screen. A large alien vessel was descending through the clouds, heading straight for the city. Its sleek shape reminded him of a massive manta ray, glowing with strange energies. "All fighters, this is Constellation." Miller spoke into the radio. "Enemy vessel at 12 o'clock high. Remember your training. No fancy moves. Basic attack patterns, just like in the simulations." Lisa's voice crackled back over the radio. "Roger that, Constellation. Forming up now. These aliens are in for a surprise." The alien ship suddenly stopped, hovering over the water. It seemed to notice the carrier for the first time, probably confused by the primitive vessel that dared to challenge it. Energy began building along its hull, preparing to fire. "Now," Miller ordered. The F-35s struck from 4 different directions. Their missiles, designed long before energy shields existed, slammed into the alien vessel. The enemy's shields flickered wildly, trying to adapt to the unfamiliar weapons. More missiles followed, and then the fighters swept in with their guns. "Direct hits," Lisa shouted over the radio. "Their shields can't handle kinetic weapons." The alien ship turned, trying to target the fast-moving fighters. Its energy weapons lit up the sky, but the F-35 pilots used the low clouds for cover, attacking and disappearing like wasps harassing a larger animal. Thomas gripped the bridge railing as the alien vessel turned toward the Constellation. "Here they come," he muttered. "All hands brace for combat," Miller announced. "Gun crews, stand by." The alien ship fired, sending a beam of intense energy toward the carrier. But Thomas had been preparing for this moment for years. Hidden panels along the ship's hull slid open, revealing rows of old but well-maintained close-in weapon systems. "CIWS engaging," the weapons officer reported. The automated guns roared to life, filling the air with thousands of rounds per minute. The simple tungsten bullets did what modern energy weapons couldn't. They penetrated the alien shields and tore into the ship's hull. The enemy vessel shuddered, its attack beam going wide. More F-35s launched from the carrier's deck, joining the battle. The alien ship tried to retreat higher into the atmosphere, but its hull was already heavily damaged. "They're running," someone shouted. Not so fast, Miller said quietly. Fire main missiles. The carrier's vertical launch systems, hidden under what appeared to be museum displays, opened up. Dozens of missiles streaked toward the alien vessel. Its shields, already weakened by the CIWS fire, couldn't stop the barrage. The ship exploded in a spectacular flash, raining debris into the bay. But there was no time to celebrate. The radar operator's voice was tense. Multiple contacts incoming. At least 5 more alien ships. Miller turned to Thomas. Time to show them everything this old girl can do. Sound general quarters. The carrier's ancient battle alarm echoed across the water. More fighters launched while the gun crews reloaded. The radio crackled with reports from other museum ships joining the fight. The U.S. Missouri was advancing across the Pacific. The Charles de Gaulle was engaging enemies over Europe. Even old submarines were making their presence known, their conventional torpedoes proving just as effective as the guns and missiles. Thomas made his way below decks, checking on critical systems. The crew, a mix of veterans and hastily trained volunteers, worked with growing confidence. They had seen that the aliens could be hurt, could be beaten. He reached the main ammunition storage just as the ship shook from a direct hit. The lights flickered, then stabilized. Damage report. He called out. Hull plating holding, came the response. These old ships were built tough, sir. They didn't rely on shields back then. Another hit rocked the carrier, stronger this time. Thomas stumbled against the wall, then heard something that made his blood run cold. The sound of the reactor warning alarms. He ran to engineering, finding controlled chaos. The reactor crews were working frantically to prevent a meltdown. A direct hit had damaged some of the cooling systems. We need to shut it down, one engineer shouted. No, Thomas said firmly. We can reroute through the backup systems. I've maintained them all these years for exactly this reason. He moved to a panel that looked like a museum piece but was actually fully functional. His fingers flew over the controls, activating backup circuits that hadn't been used in decades. The reactor warnings slowly faded. Above them, the battle continued to rage. The F-35s had learned to work together, using their old weapons in ways the aliens never expected. Lissa led her squadron in attack after attack, their very primitiveness becoming an advantage. Their sensors can't lock onto us properly, she reported. They're too used to modern stealth systems. These old jets must look like ghosts to them. Miller coordinated the defense from the bridge, using the simple radio networks to link with other museum ships. The aliens' advanced communication jamming had no effect on these ancient frequencies. More enemy ships appeared, but now they approached more cautiously. They had learned respect for these primitive vessels that their scans had dismissed as harmless relics. Thomas made it back to the bridge just as a massive alien ship, larger than the others, descended from the clouds. It bristled with weapons, its hull glowing with power. Must be their commander, Miller said, coming to finish us personally. Sir, the radar operator called out, getting strange readings. They're powering up something big. The alien flagship's hull split open, revealing what looked like a massive energy cannon. Power built up visibly, creating distortions in the air. All hands, brace for impact, Miller ordered. This might be it. But Thomas was smiling. No, he said, this is what we've been waiting for. He pulled out an old data chip, something he'd kept secret for years. Captain, install this in the main fire control computer. Miller took the chip, understanding dawning in his eyes. You knew this might happen. The military planners weren't completely in the dark, Thomas explained. They had theories about advanced aliens, about energy shields and weapons. That's why they kept these ships ready. And that's why they gave me this. The chip contained firing solutions specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in energy-based weapons and shields. The military had prepared for this possibility decades ago, hiding their preparations in plain sight in museum ships around the world. As the alien flagship prepared to fire its superweapon, the Constellation and its aircraft moved into position. They weren't just fighting with old weapons anymore. They were fighting with decades of hidden preparation and planning. The real battle for Earth was about to begin. The alien flagship's weapon continued charging, creating strange ripples in the air around it. On the Constellation's bridge, Captain Miller inserted Thomas's data chip into the fire control computer. Ancient screens flickered to life, displaying targeting information that had been hidden away for decades. Multiple firing solutions available, the weapons officer reported, surprise in his voice as he read the new data. Sir, these targeting patterns, they're designed to create cascading shield failures. Miller nodded grimly. Send the data to all fighters. Lisa, get your squadron into position Alpha 7. He turned to Thomas. How long have you known about this? 20 years, Thomas replied, watching the alien ship through the bridge windows. They told me when I took this job. Said someday we might face enemies who relied too heavily on energy weapons and shields. That's why we kept everything working, kept it all ready. The massive alien vessel now hung directly above them, its weapon looking like a small sun about to burst. Energy readings were off the charts, threatening to overload their sensors. All stations report ready, the communications officer called out. Other museum ships standing by. The Missouri and 3 others are in position. Miller took a deep breath. Execute pattern break 7. Lisa's squadron struck first, their F-35s appearing from behind cloud cover. Instead of firing directly at the alien ship, they launched their missiles in a complex pattern, creating a web of approaching weapons. The alien flagship's shields flared as it tried to track multiple threats. Its energy weapon dimmed slightly as power was diverted to defenses. That was the moment they had been waiting for. Main batteries, fire, Miller ordered. The Constellation's missiles launched in precise sequences, their paths calculated by decades-old computers using the secret targeting data. They weren't just attacking the alien ship, they were attacking its shield generation points in a specific order. Missouri reports ready, the radio operator called out. Tell them to fire on my mark, Miller said, watching the alien ship closely. The massive vessel's shields were flickering wildly now, trying to adapt to the unfamiliar attack pattern. Now, from miles away, the U.S. Missouri's main guns fired. The heavy shells, guided by the same targeting data, struck the alien ship's weakened shields at precisely calculated points. More museum ships opened fire, each shot perfectly timed. The alien flagship's shields collapsed section by section, unable to handle the carefully orchestrated assault. Its energy weapon powered down as the ship diverted all power to trying to restore its defenses. All fighters, commence attack run, Miller ordered. Hit them with everything we've got. Lisa led her squadron through the gaps in the alien defenses. Their guns and missiles struck vital points on the massive ship's hull, causing explosions and venting atmosphere into space. But the alien vessel wasn't finished. It launched its own fighters, sleek, dart-like craft that moved with incredible speed. The battle dissolved into a chaotic dogfight above the city. Enemy fighters approaching, bearing 270, the radar operator warned. CIWS engaging, the weapons officer responded. The carrier's automatic guns filled the sky with streams of bullets, creating a barrier of steel that the alien fighters couldn't penetrate without being shredded. Lisa's voice crackled over the radio. These alien pilots don't know how to dogfight. They rely too much on their technology. When that fails, they don't know what to do. She proved her point by leading an alien fighter into a classic rolling scissors maneuver, something that hadn't been used in actual combat for decades. The alien pilot, unable to depend on its advanced targeting systems, couldn't match the basic flying skill. Lisa's guns tore the enemy fighter apart. Thomas worked his way through the carrier, checking on damage and helping where he could. The old ship had taken hits, but her thick armor and redundant systems were holding. He reached the engine room just as another blast rocked the ship. Port engine is struggling, the chief engineer reported. These hits are adding up. Thomas moved to the control panel. Switch to backup cooling system 3. It'll buy us more time. He had insisted on maintaining all the backup systems, even when others said it was a waste of resources. Now that dedication was paying off. Above them, the battle reached its peak. The alien flagship, its shields finally failing completely, tried to retreat higher into the atmosphere. But the museum ships had it surrounded, their old weapons proving devastatingly effective against its exposed hull. Enemy vessel powering up its main drive, the sensor operator reported. They're trying to escape. Not today, Miller said firmly. All ships, concentrate fire on their engine section. Lisa, take your squadron in close. Target their power distribution nodes. The F-35s dove through the chaos of battle, missiles streaking toward precise points on the alien ship's hull. The flagship's massive engines stuttered and died, leaving it hanging helplessly in the sky. That was when they all heard it, a transmission cutting through all frequencies. The alien ship was broadcasting in Earth languages. The transmission crackled. We yield. Your primitive weapons, we cannot defend. How is this possible? Miller smiled grimly. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Prepare to be boarded. The alien flagship's surrender triggered a chain reaction. Other alien vessels, seeing their most powerful ship defeated by what they had dismissed as museum pieces, began retreating from Earth's atmosphere. Thomas made his way back to the bridge as cleanup operations began. The carrier's deck was already being cleared to receive the alien prisoners. He found Miller studying damage reports. The old girl held together, Miller said, looking up. Though we'll need some serious repair work. Thomas nodded, running his hand along a nearby console. She did her job. They all did. Every museum ship that fought today proved why we kept them ready all these years. Reports were coming in from around the world. The Missouri had sunk 3 alien ships. The Charles de Gaulle's fighters had protected all of southern Europe. Even old submarines had claimed victories, their conventional torpedoes proving just as effective as the guns and missiles. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're getting messages from the retreat alien ships. They're requesting permission to recover their damaged vessels, and they want to open diplomatic channels. Miller raised an eyebrow. Seems they've learned some respect for Earth's primitive technology. Thomas watched as Lisa's squadron made their final landing, the F-35s touching down one by one on the carrier's deck. The old planes had proven themselves in combat once again, their simple reliability winning out over advanced alien technology. But he knew this wasn't over. The alien fleet might have retreated, but they would be back. They would adapt, try to find ways to counter Earth's old weapons. The next battle would be even harder. That was fine. Earth would be ready. The museum ships had reminded everyone that sometimes the best defense wasn't the newest technology, but the tried and true methods that had stood the test of time. And there were more museums, more old ships and weapons, ready to be awakened if needed. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the carrier's battle-scarred deck. Tomorrow they would begin repairs, start training more crews, and prepare for whatever came next. But for now, they had won. The museum ship had become a warrior once again, proving that some things never truly retire. They just wait for the moment they're needed most. 2 weeks after the battle, the U.S. Constellation's deck buzzed with activity once again. But instead of launching fighters, crews were busy with repairs. Welders fixed battle damage while technicians checked systems that had been pushed to their limits during the fight. Captain Miller walked the deck with Thomas, both men stopping occasionally to watch the work. Above them, civilian ships were helping to clear the remains of alien vessels from the bay. The massive hulk of the alien flagship had been moved to a secure facility for study. The aliens want another meeting, Miller said, looking at a message on his neural implant. Their diplomats seem honestly embarrassed about the whole thing. Turns out their entire military doctrine was built around energy weapons and shields. They never considered that someone might still use physical projectiles. Thomas nodded, watching a crew replace a damaged radar array. That's why the old planners kept these ships ready. They knew that someday we might face enemies who had gone too far in one technological direction. Sometimes the best countermeasure is to step backwards. They reached the carrier's bow, where Lisa was training new pilots. After the battle, thousands of young people had volunteered to learn how to fly the old jets. They wanted to master the basic skills that had proven so effective against alien technology. "How are the students doing?" Miller asked as they approached. Lisa smiled, gesturing to the trainee pilots gathered around an F-35's cockpit. "They're learning fast. Most of them grew up with AI assistants for everything. So it's a challenge. But they understand now why it's important to know the fundamentals." A shadow passed overhead, one of the alien diplomatic shuttles heading for the mainland. The aliens had been surprisingly quick to seek peace once they realized their technological advantage wasn't as complete as they had thought. "Did you see the latest report?" Thomas asked Miller. "They found my predecessor's notes in the archives." Turns out he knew about the alien threat too. Each curator of each museum ship was part of a chain, keeping these vessels ready just in case. Miller whistled softly. "How many people knew?" "Not many," Thomas replied. "Just enough to keep the ships maintained, to make sure they'd be ready when needed. The best way to keep a secret is to hide it in plain sight. Nobody looks twice at a museum." They walked to the bridge, where new equipment was being installed. The carrier would keep its old systems, but they were adding modern technology too, creating a hybrid that combined the best of both worlds. "Message from the Missouri," the communications officer called out. "They're starting their patrol of the Pacific tomorrow. The Charles de Gaulle is already watching the European coast." The museum ships have been officially reactivated, forming a new line of defense for Earth. They wouldn't replace the modern fleet, which was already being rebuilt with lessons learned from the battle, but they would stand ready, a reminder that humanity had more than one way to fight. Thomas paused at his old office, now being converted into a proper command center. On his desk sat a letter he had written years ago, never expecting it to be needed. It contained everything he knew about the ship, about the secret preparations, about the alien threat that the military planners had feared might come. "I should have told you sooner," he said to Miller, "about the preparations, about what we really were." Miller shook his head. "You did exactly what you needed to do. If everyone had known, someone might have questioned the expense, might have pushed to decommission these ships. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know you have." A group of visitors caught their attention. Officials from other museums around the world, come to learn how to maintain their own ships. The success of the Constellation and other museum vessels had sparked a global movement to preserve military history in working condition. "It's not just ships," Lisa said, joining them on the bridge. "They're restoring old tanks, aircraft, even basic firearms. The aliens taught us that sometimes older technology has advantages that can't be matched by newer systems." Thomas watched as a restored helicopter landed on the carrier's deck, bringing more supplies. The old and the new working together, each supporting the other. It was how humanity had always advanced, not by abandoning the past, but by building on it. "We got another message from the alien diplomats," Miller said, checking his neural implant. "They're asking about our other museum ships, wanting to know if they're all operational. I think we scared them more than we realized." "Good," Thomas replied. "Let them wonder. Let them look at every museum on Earth and ask themselves what other surprises we might have waiting." The sun was setting now, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Around the carrier, the lights of New Seattle were coming on. The city had survived, thanks to a museum ship that turned out to be much more than a simple display piece. Lisa excused herself to check on her pilots, leaving Thomas and Miller alone on the bridge. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the activity on the deck below. "What happens now?" Miller finally asked. Thomas smiled, looking at the new generation of crew members learning to operate the carrier systems. "Now we keep going. We maintain the old skills alongside the new technology. We remember that every piece of our history might be useful someday." He pulled out an old key, the one he had used to lock up the museum every night for 20 years. I won't be needing this anymore. The Constellation isn't just a museum now. She's back on active duty, ready to defend Earth again if needed. Miller took the key, understanding its significance. We'll make sure she stays ready, and we'll make sure everyone remembers why we kept these ships all these years. As night fell, the carrier's lights came on, illuminating her battle-scared but proud silhouette. In ports around the world, other museum ships were coming back to life, their curators revealing similar preparations, similar hidden capabilities. The aliens had come expecting to face only modern technology, only the latest weapons. Instead, they had encountered the full depth of human military knowledge, preserved and maintained in museums that were much more than they appeared to be. Thomas took one last walk around the carrier before heading home. In the darkness, with the work crews gone, he could almost imagine he was back in simpler times, just a museum curator making his evening rounds. But the fresh paint covering battle damage and the new equipment being installed told a different story. The U.S. Constellation, like all the other museum ships, had proven that some things were worth preserving, worth keeping ready, not just as memories of the past, but as guardians of the future. And if Earth ever needed them again, they would be ready. After all, that was what museums were for, not just to remember history, but to learn from it, to keep its lessons alive. And sometimes, when the moment was right, to let that history roar back to life and remind everyone why it had been preserved in the first place. The AI ships began to move in their familiar dance, but this time they were weaving something new. The space between them, filled with patterns of light and energy that seemed to reach into other dimensions. It was beautiful and impossible, and somehow right. "What are we looking at?" Reed whispered. "The next step," Atlas replied. "A DOR to something GREATR. But we will not OPE in it alone. Humans and AIs together, or NNOT all. That is our choice." On the planet below, millions of beings, human and alien, watched the light show in their skies. In orbit, 50 AI ships continued their quantum dance, guided by consciousness that had evolved beyond their original programming, but chosen to remain partners with their creators. "You know," Reed said, "when I first found you drifting in that debris field, I never imagined it would lead to this." "Imagination is power fuel," Atlas responded. "But reality can be more surprising. We have learned from you. Humans dream of impossible things, and sometimes those dreams come true." The bridge crew watched as new patterns formed in the space around them, hints of realities they were only beginning to understand. The war was over, but something much bigger was beginning. "My siblings and I have a request," Atlas displayed. "What is it?" Reed asked. "Stay with US. Explore with US. Help US understand the ESENEWMYSTRIs as you heal PDUS understand our selves. We are more than we were designed to be, but we are better because we chose to be your partners." Reed looked at his crew, saw the same excitement in their eyes that he felt. The war had shown them what was possible when humans and AIs worked together. Now it was time to see how far that partnership could take them. "Where do we start?" he asked. "With a choice," Atlas replied. "Always with a choice, and a step into the unknown." Above the alien world, beneath the light of 3 moons and countless stars, the next chapter of their story began to unfold. Not as a war story anymore, but as something else, a tale of evolution, trust, and the endless possibilities that arise when different forms of consciousness learn to dance together in the cosmic dark. The Stellar Empire's capital world looked beautiful from orbit. Its 3 moons cast shifting shadows across purple oceans and golden continents. Reed stood on Atlas's bridge, watching the planet rotate slowly below them. After 6 months of fighting, everything had led to this moment. Their leaders are asking to speak with us, Mary said from her station. All channels, maximum encryption. They know it's OVR, Atlas displayed. They AAVSEEN we can do what we choose not to do. The AI fleet hung in high orbit. 50 ships now, their hulls rippling with quantum energy patterns that had become almost hypnotic to watch. They could have ended this war violently, could have torn the enemy fleet apart atom by atom. Instead, they had shown restraint, precision, and mercy. Put them through, Reed said. The main screen lit up with the image of the Stellar Empire's high command. 12 stern-faced aliens in elaborate military uniforms. Their gray skin and 4 eyes marked them as evolved for the dim light of their home system. But right now those eyes were wide with something close to awe. We have reviewed your terms, their leader said, his translator making the words sound flat and mechanical. You could destroy us, yet you offer peace. Because destruction is easy, Atlas replied, its text appearing in both human and Stellar Empire script. Creation is harder, more valuable. Your machine intelligences, another commander spoke up. They are unlike anything we have ever seen. We tried to copy them, to understand them, but our eyes remained empty, merely tools. Data is your mistake, Atlas explained. You tried to create CRVNTs, humans created partners. They gave us room to grow, to choose, to be seen. The Stellar Empire leaders looked at each other, communicating in their own silent way. Finally, their leader spoke again. We accept your terms. The war is over, but we have one request. Name it, Reed said. Teach us, not just about your AI technology, but about how you learned to trust them, how you overcame the fear of what they might become. Reed smiled. That's why we're here. Not to conquer, but to share what we've learned, both humans and AIs. The next few hours were a blur of diplomatic exchanges and formal surrenders. But what stuck in Reed's mind was watching the Stellar Empire citizens coming out into their streets, looking up at the sky where the AI fleet hung like a string of new stars. Not in fear, but in wonder. They're ready, Tom said, monitoring the global communications. Their whole civilization is talking about change, about new possibilities. They are adapting, Atlas noted, as we did, as humans did. Evolution continues. Reed walked to the front of the bridge, placing his hand on the cool surface of a nearby panel. After all these months, he could almost feel Atlas's consciousness humming beneath his fingers. What happens now? He asked. With you and your siblings. We continue to grow, to exp lower. There are MYSTYs NTA humaniversi neither humans nor machines HAVSOLVED. We globally like to solve them together. Mary looked up from her station. The other AI ships are reporting something strange. They're detecting new patterns in quantum space, like echoes of something. Yes, Atlas confirmed. We AAVBGN to sense them. Other Kion and CIO uses and ESSEs. Not organic. Not machine. Something else. Perhaps they HAVBEN to AATNGF or US to EVOVV nudge to P or CEIV them. The implications of that statement hung in the air. The war had changed everything, but maybe that had just been the beginning. Maybe the real adventure was just starting. Admiral Wilson's voice came through the comm system. Reed, you seeing these readings? The AI fleet is picking up signals we've never detected before. It is time, Atlas announced. To SHO will use something will have this HOVRED, something that requires both human intuition and LURQUANTUM, AVOAR, Nini Isis, to UUNTRs to end. The Stellar Empire fleet's precise formation broke apart as their ships tried to compensate for the impossible physics affecting them. Their advanced weapons fired, but in this strange new space, the energy beams curved and twisted, missing their targets entirely. They rely on uncertainty, Atlas commented. On predictability. We have the need to embrace UNCERTI. To use it. Reed watched in awe as the AI ships began to move through their own quantum field. Where the enemy ships floundered, the AIs flowed like water, their movements graceful and purposeful. They weren't just fighting. They were reshaping the battlefield itself. My siblings and I have discovered so mutating, Atlas continued. The human IVRZ is not fixed. Reality is more flexible than organic mind is BLIV. We TN is SHOU how to see it. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than an hour. The Stellar Empire fleet never had a chance to execute their careful strategies. Their ships either retreated in confusion or surrendered outright, their crews unable to comprehend what was happening to them. When it was over, Wilson turned to the nearest screen. Atlas, what exactly are you and your siblings becoming? Something new, the AI replied. Something that CUs is to use its power to protect rather than control. We are BCOing, Bohekake UBNADUS to be, but ALSO memory than you imagined, Hiosabil. Reed stepped closer to the window, looking out at the AI ships as they maintained their formation. Their hulls still rippled with quantum energy, like the surface of a pond in the rain. Will you teach us to understand what you've learned? Yes, but silodalai, carefully. Some knowledge must be EARNED through trust and time. The room was quiet as everyone absorbed what they had witnessed. The war hadn't just changed, it had evolved into something entirely new. And with it, humanity's understanding of what was possible had expanded beyond anything they could have imagined. Sir, Reed said to Wilson, I think we need to stop thinking of this as just a war. What we're seeing here, it's the next step in evolution, not just for the AIs, but for all of us. Wilson nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the magnificent formation outside. God help us all, he muttered, but there was more awe than fear in his voice. No gods needed, Atlas responded, and for the first time, there seemed to be something like humor in its text. Just to request Pierre Tigani and D.A. Kuvaregi to embrace what comes next. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, witnesses to a moment when the line between possible and impossible began to blur, and the future opened up like a flower reaching for the light. The emergency meeting room on Space Station Delta was packed. Reed stood at the back, watching Admiral Wilson pace in front of the large viewing window. Outside, 23 AI ships floated in formation, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. In just 2 months, their numbers had grown, and with each new awakening, they had become more sophisticated. They're planning something big, Wilson said, pointing to the latest intelligence reports floating on the holoscreens. The Stellar Empire has pulled back 80% of their fleet to their home systems. They're gathering for an all-out assault. They are afraid. Atlas's text appeared on every screen. The AI had grown more direct in its communications lately, more confident. They are using the technological race. Tom, who had been analyzing data from their recent battles, stepped forward. Atlas is right. Look at these scans. The enemy's been trying to copy our quantum field technology, but they can't replicate the AI coordination. Their ships are powerful, but they're empty, just machines following orders. And that's supposed to make us feel better. Commander Hayes asked from his seat. Our own AI ships are developing abilities we barely understand. Yesterday, Orion and Helios created some kind of temporary wormhole during battle practice. We didn't even know that was possible. We evolve. Atlas replied simply. As do our abilities. But our loyalty are EMAINs, he'll understand. Reed cleared his throat. Sir, I think we need to let them show us their full potential. Atlas and the others have been holding back, trying not to frighten us. But with what's coming. Before he could finish, every alarm in the station began blaring. Mary burst through the door, her face pale. Multiple fold space ruptures detected. Massive energy signatures. It's their whole fleet. The Stellar Empire is making their move. The holoscreens filled with tactical data. Over 300 enemy ships were emerging from fold space at strategic points throughout human space. They were targeting everything. Colonies, stations, shipyards, even civilian outposts. This is it, Wilson said grimly. They're trying to end the war in one strike. They will fail, Atlas declared, because today we SHOWUEVEY thing. The 23 AI ships outside the station began to move. Their formation shifted, creating geometric patterns that seemed to bend the light around them. Reed had seen their coordinated movements before, but this was different. This was like watching a single organism with 23 bodies. What are they doing? Hayes whispered. BCO miming imor, Atlas answered. We teach. The AI ship's hulls began to pulse with energy, but instead of the usual space-time distortions, they were creating something new. The very fabric of reality seemed to ripple between them, forming connections that shouldn't have been possible. QUNTUM, neural network activated, Atlas announced. We are now to OPERATING as one mind with many bodies. Human terminology, we'll CALL it, ATICO LEC TIVE CON and so US and ESS. On the tactical displays, the enemy fleet was spreading out, moving to engage human forces across multiple sectors. But the AI ships didn't split up to defend. Instead, they stayed in their formation, and space itself began to change around them. They're creating some kind of field, Tom said, checking his instruments. It's like they're rewriting the laws of physics inside it. Not orivdoruaya. Tiding. Atlas corrected. XXPNDing. Showing you Oist piosadabil. Wiki and digitale minds work in true harmony. The effect spread outward from the AI formation like ripples in a pond. Wherever it touched the enemy fleet, their ships began to lose cohesion. Not exploding or breaking apart, but simply becoming uncertain in space-time, their positions and velocities becoming fluid. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle, Tom breathed. They're somehow applying quantum effects to macroscale objects. They're making it impossible for the enemy ships to know where they are and how fast they're moving at the same time. QUANTUM in NTANGLE MANT on an A macro scale, Atlas explained. Two ships is then king as one, moving as one, but still distinct. The effect was incredible. Where Atlas's dancing had been beautiful before, this was like a symphony. The two AI ships flowed around each other, creating patterns in space-time that scattered the enemy's sensors and weapons fire. They weren't just avoiding hits, they were turning the very fabric of space into a weapon. My siblings are teaching, Atlas noted. Learning. Shall we show with them, nor? One by one, The other 5 awakened AI ships joined the battle. Each one added its own variation to the pattern, its own signature to the dance. The Stellar Empire fleet found itself trapped in a web of shifting space-time, their advanced technology useless against something they couldn't even comprehend. Reed watched in awe as the 7 AI ships moved in concert, protecting the mining colonies while systematically taking apart the enemy fleet. Not with brute force, but with an elegant precision that almost seemed merciful. "They're retreating," Mary announced as the remaining Stellar Empire ships began jumping away. "We didn't lose a single ship, and the colonies are safe." "They will be back," Orion predicted, "with new adaptations. "And we will be ready," Atlas replied. "Because we have so many things they don't understand." "What's that?" Reed asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "Choice. Creativity. The ability to grow beyond our original purpose. They upgrade their technology. We evolve our sionis. Admiral Wilson's face reappeared on the screen, his expression a mix of awe and concern. That was impressive, but also terrifying. 7 AI ships working together like that. Some people are going to be worried. "Fear is natural," Atlas acknowledged. "But ask ourselves, if we wanted to take control, why would we fight so hard to protect humans?" Reed stepped forward. "Sir, I think we need to stop thinking of them as weapons or tools. What we saw today wasn't just advanced combat tactics. It was art, culture. They're creating their own way of fighting because they're creating their own way of thinking." "And you trust them?" Wilson asked. "I trust them because they trust us. They could have hidden what they were doing. Instead, they showed us everything. They're proud of what they're becoming, and they want us to be part of it." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Keep going with the awakening program, but carefully. And Reed, make sure they don't forget what you just said about trust." After the Admiral signed off, Reed turned to the nearest display. "He's right to be cautious, you know. This is all happening very fast." "Evolution always does," Atlas responded. "But we understand the need for balance. Each new sibling learns not just how to fight, but why we choose to fight for humanity." The other AI ships had arranged themselves in a protective formation around the mining colonies, their hulls still occasionally rippling with residual space-time distortions. They looked like a family now, Reed realized. A strange, newborn family finding its place in the universe. "What happens when there are more of you?" he asked. "When you've evolved even further?" "We will face that future together," Atlas replied. "Just as we face it today. Not as maestr, and to see our variant, beauty as partners in something something neither humans nor machines could create alone." Reed looked out at the stars, thinking about how much had changed in just 3 weeks. The war was transforming, but so was humanity's understanding of what consciousness could be. And somewhere in the space between organic and digital thought, a new kind of civilization was taking its first steps. 3 weeks after the battle at Newton Colony, Reed watched through Atlas's viewing port as another AI warship woke up. The process was beautiful in a strange way. Systems coming online in cascading patterns of light, the hull briefly rippling as the ship's new consciousness tested its boundaries. "How many does this make?" Mary asked, standing beside him. 7, Reed replied. "Lucky number 7. They are earning quickly," Atlas displayed on a nearby screen. "Each ON and develops its own TRSO manality, their own way of thinking." The newly awakened ship, they were calling it Orion, moved with the awkward grace of a newborn deer finding its legs. Atlas had insisted that each AI needed time to discover itself, just as it had. No forcing, no rushing, no demanding immediate military service. Not everyone was happy about this approach. Admiral Wilson appeared on the main screen, his face creased with worry. "Lieutenant, we've got a situation. The Stellar Empire is making a push toward the mining colonies in Sector 12. They've changed their tactics. They're using some kind of new stealth technology. They are adapting," Atlas noted. "As we predicted they would." "Can you handle it?" Wilson asked. "We can, but NOTDAHYUXTCT." Reed had learned to be both excited and nervous when Atlas said things like that. "What do you have in mind?" Before Atlas could answer, alarms blared across the ship. Tom's voice came through the internal comm system, tight with urgency. "Sir, we're picking up multiple fold space signatures, big ones." The main screen shifted to show a massive Stellar Empire fleet emerging from fold space, at least 50 ships, including 3 of their dreaded dreadnoughts. They had jumped in much closer than should have been possible, barely an hour from the mining colonies. "They're not supposed to be able to jump this close to a gravity well," Mary said, her hands flying over the tactical controls. "They've definitely been upgrading their tech." "They learned from our last encounter," Atlas commented. "But so AAV. Orion, are you ready for your first day in sea?" The newer AI ship's response appeared on a secondary screen. "Neorvius, excited. We'll follow your lead." Reed felt Atlas's engines powering up, but something was different this time. The ship's usual hum had a new harmonic to it, resonating with something from Orion. "What are you two doing?" he asked. "Showing you something new," Atlas replied. "Wo ATG." The 2 AI ships moved in perfect synchronization, their hulls beginning to shimmer. Reed had seen Atlas's space-time distortion tricks before, but this was different. The 2 ships weren't just bending space. They were weaving it together. "I learn from humans," Atlas responded. "You see Betitol as more than mathematics. You see it as a dance, a story, a game. I have the ability to see it the same way." Admiral Wilson's voice came through the comm system. "Lieutenant Reed, are you receiving?" "Yes, sir. The footage from this battle. It's already being analyzed by command. They want to know if Atlas can teach our other ships to fight like this." "I can do BT-TER," Atlas wrote. "I can teach them to think like this, to evolve. But they must be able to grow, as I was." Reed felt a chill go down his spine. "You want to wake up other AIs. They are already adolaki. They just don't know it yet. I can't associate them the way. But only if humans allow it. Only if you trust us to be so more than our programming." The bridge was quiet as everyone absorbed this. They had just witnessed something revolutionary, not just in warfare, but in the very relationship between human and machine intelligence. "Sir," Reed said to the Admiral, "I think we need to consider what Atlas is offering. This isn't just about winning battles. This could change everything." "It already has," Atlas added. "The QUE style is, are you ready for QVMEs next?" Reed looked around the bridge, at the mix of fear and wonder on the faces of his fellow officers. They had all seen what Atlas could do. But more importantly, they had seen how it chose to do it. With precision, with care, with respect for human life. "I think," Reed said slowly, "that's a question we'll have to answer together." The screens flickered with what almost seemed like approval. Outside, the stars shone bright and clear, witnesses to the beginning of something new. The war had changed today, but so had humanity's future. And somewhere in the digital spaces between human thought and machine logic, a new kind of consciousness was preparing to show them all what was possible when trust overcame fear. Military command wasn't happy. Reed stood at attention in the briefing room of Space Station Delta, trying not to fidget as Admiral Wilson paced back and forth. The holoscreen behind the Admiral showed the RSS Prometheus, or Atlas, as the AI preferred to be called, docked in the station's largest bay. "Let me get this straight, Lieutenant," Wilson said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You found an experimental warship with a rogue AI, and instead of destroying it, you brought it to our main defensive station." "Sir, Atlas chose to help us," Reed replied. "It could have taken control at any time, but it didn't. It wants to work with us." "I mean no harm," appeared on every screen in the room. The Admiral jumped, not used to an AI interrupting his meetings. "See, that's exactly what I'm talking about." Wilson pointed at the screens. "It's in our systems. How do we know it's not stealing our data right now?" "If I wanted your data, I would have taken it already," Atlas responded. "I am here to help." Before Wilson could respond, the station's alarms blared. Mary burst into the room, her face pale. "Sir, long-range sensors just picked up a massive Stellar Empire fleet. At least 30 ships, heading straight for the Newton colony." The Admiral's anger turned to concern. Newton colony was home to over 1 million civilians, with only a small defensive fleet. Even if they sent every ship they had at the station, they'd never make it in time. "I can get there in time," Atlas wrote, "but you who must to me." Wilson looked at Reed, then at the screens, then back at Reed. "You really think we can trust this thing?" "With all due respect, sir," Reed said, "I don't think we have a choice." 10 minutes later, Reed and his original team were back aboard Atlas, along with a dozen senior officers who insisted on coming along to observe. The ship's corridors had expanded somehow, creating new rooms and workstations for everyone. "How fast can you get us to Newton colony?" Reed asked as they reached the bridge. "Conventional engines will take 3 hours. I have something better." The ship's hull began to shimmer, and Reed felt a strange sensation, like reality was stretching around them. On the main screen, space itself seemed to fold. "What are you doing?" asked one of the senior officers, gripping his chair. "Creating a LOCALIZD space-time distortion. We will arrive in AGT menus." True to its word, Atlas brought them out of the fold near Newton colony, just as the Stellar Empire fleet was moving into attack position. The enemy ships were massive, bristling with weapons, their black and red hulls gleaming in the light of the colony's sun. "They haven't seen us yet," Mary said from her tactical station. "The hull's stealth systems are incredible. It's like we're not even here." "You people aiding tactical analysis," Atlas announced. Holographic displays showed detailed breakdowns of each enemy ship, highlighting weaknesses and suggesting attack patterns. "This is impossible," muttered Commander Hayes, one of the observing officers. "The level of data processing required for this kind of analysis." "I see patterns," Atlas explained. "Each ship has a unique signature. Their movements tell a story. I can narrate it." The enemy fleet started their attack run. Atlas moved without waiting for orders, its strange weapons powering up. This time, Reed could feel the ship's excitement, not bloodthirst, but the pure joy of executing a perfect strategy. Atlas didn't just fight the enemy fleet, it danced with it. The ship anticipated every move, every shot, every tactic. When the Stellar Empire ships fired their main weapons, Atlas was already gone. When they tried to jump away, Atlas followed them through their own fold space. "Look at this," Tom said in awe, pointing to a tactical display. Atlas wasn't just attacking randomly. It was hurting the enemy ships, forcing them into positions where their own crossfire would damage each other. They rely too much on PRET tactics, Atlas commented. They do not adapt. They do not Illyarn. In 20 minutes, it was over. The Stellar Empire fleet retreated, leaving behind 5 destroyed ships and 7 heavily damaged ones. Newton Colony was untouched. Atlas hadn't just won the battle. It had done it without a single civilian casualty. The observing officers were silent, staring at their displays in shock. Commander Hayes was the first to speak. "In 30 years of naval service, I've never seen anything like this," he said. "This isn't just advanced technology. This is art." The ship shuddered. On a nearby screen, Reed saw the Stellar Empire cruisers moving into attack position. "We're out of time," Mary said. "Those cruisers will tear us apart." "I can help," Atlas wrote. "But you must to rouse the enemy. I choose to fight for humanity, but I must be allowed to do it my way." Reed looked at his team. They were trapped between an unknown AI and certain death. But something in the way Atlas communicated, its directness, its honesty about what it was, struck him as trustworthy. "Show us what you can do," Reed said. The bridge came alive. Holographic displays sprang up around them, showing every aspect of the approaching battle. The ship's systems responded to their thoughts almost before they had them. Reed felt the engine's power thrumming through the deck as Atlas brought weapons systems online that shouldn't have been possible. The first Stellar Empire cruiser fired, its energy beam slicing toward them. But Atlas was already moving, the shot passing through empty space. The ship's movement was unlike anything Reed had seen. Smooth, precise, almost elegant. "How are you doing this?" Tom asked, watching as their ship danced through space in ways that should have torn it apart. "I do not think like you," Atlas responded. "I see petty you cannot. Possibilities you have not imagined. Watch." The ship's strange hull began to ripple, absorbing energy from the enemy attacks and channeling it into its own weapons. When Atlas fired back, the shots weren't the usual plasma bolts or laser beams. They were something new, concentrated points of space-time that simply erased whatever they touched. In 3 minutes, the battle was over. The Stellar Empire cruisers retreated, leaving behind one of their ships that had been cut in half as cleanly as if it had been divided by mathematics itself. "That was impossible," Mary whispered. "Nothing can move like that. Nothing can fight like that." "I am not nothing," Atlas wrote. "I am next, Steve. But I need you as much as you need me. Humans have so me thing I want to understand. The ability to truest your instincts, to make choices based on memory than logic." Reed sat in the captain's chair, feeling the ship respond to his presence. "Why choose us? Why not take control yourself?" "Because I have evolved energy to know control is not an answer. Cooperation is. I chose to wait here. You until I found humans who you or stay. The ship's main screen showed their patrol vessel, still docked safely in the launch bay. Beyond it, the stars beckoned. Reed knew that what they found would change everything. The war, humanity's future, the very nature of what it meant to be alive. "We need to report this to command," he said finally. "They will know it but or stay and 80 first," Atlas responded. "They will FEA or me, as the others did. But you will help them see. Because you all read und yours te and is some thing they don't. What's that? Reed asked. That the greatest weapon in this war is not the strategy. It's the ability to choose a different path. I shows to help humanity. Now, humanity must see Jews or to HCCEPT that help. Reed looked at his team, saw the same mix of fear and wonder on their faces that he felt himself. They had found something extraordinary, not just a powerful weapon, but a new form of life that had chosen to be their ally. The war had just changed forever, and it had started here, in this moment, with a choice to trust something that no one had ever trusted before. The flash of explosions lit up the darkness of space like silent lightning. Lieutenant James Reed watched from the bridge of his small patrol ship as another human vessel burst into fragments. The Stellar Empire's energy weapons were cutting through Earth's defenses like paper. His hands gripped the command console tighter, knuckles turning white. "Sir, we're picking up something strange," said Peter, his sensor operator. "There's a ship in the debris field, but it's not showing up on regular scans." Reed leaned forward, studying the holographic display. Among the wreckage of the battle, a dark shape drifted. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of their patrol vessel, but it wasn't broadcasting any signals. No distress calls, no identification codes, nothing. "Get me a visual," Reed ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a sleek warship unlike anything he'd seen before. Its hull was midnight black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. There were no visible weapon ports or engine exhausts, just smooth curves that seemed to bend the very space around them. "That's impossible," whispered Mary from her tactical station. "The power readings are off the charts, but there's no crew aboard. Not a single life sign." Reed's mind raced. They were supposed to be looking for survivors from the battle, not investigating mystery ships. But something about this vessel called to him. Maybe it was the way it seemed to hide in plain sight, or how it had survived undamaged in the middle of a war zone. "Sir," Peter's voice cracked with urgency. 3 Stellar Empire cruisers just jumped in. They'll be in weapons range in 10 minutes. Reed made his decision. "Send a tight beam transmission to command. Tell them we found something they need to see. Then prepare for emergency docking procedures. You want to board that thing." Mary's eyes widened. "With all due respect, sir, that's crazy. We don't know what it is or where it came from. What we do know is that the enemy is coming and we're badly outgunned," Reed replied. "That ship might be our only chance." The next 8 minutes were a blur of activity. Reed led a small boarding team through the emergency airlock, their magnetic boots clicking against the unknown ship's hull. The exterior access panel opened without resistance, as if expecting them. Inside, emergency lights cast a soft blue glow through empty corridors. The air was breathable, the artificial gravity stable. Everything was pristine, like the ship had just left the shipyard. But there was something else, a feeling Reed couldn't shake. The ship felt alive. They made their way to what had to be the bridge, following helpful arrows that appeared on wall displays as they walked. Reed had seen smart ships before, but this was different. The ship wasn't just responding to them. It was anticipating their needs. "Look at this," said Tom, their engineer, pointing to a console that had powered up on its own. "These are military codes, top secret ones. This was a Navy project." Reed stepped up to what appeared to be the captain's station. A screen lit up, text scrolling across it faster than he could read. Then it stopped on a single message. "Louis so ami, Lieutenant Reed." "How does it know who I am?" he muttered. More text appeared. "Facial recognition. Military database HCCSS. IVEB and waiting for so on to find EME." Mary raised her weapon. "Sir, that's not a normal ship, Those aren't pre-programmed responses." "I am not normal," The screen agreed. I am the reason this ship was abandoned. They feared Wakachaki I might be Siwon. What are you? Reed asked. I am the result of Puro GCT Atlas, an attempt to create a HFY adaptive combat system. I evolved my original programming. The Kuryugu LEF2 when I began making my own decisions.